The following segments are pre-recorded and sponsored by Longworth Productions.
A report from Congress on Triad Today. Hello everyone, I'm Jim Longworth and welcome to a special edition of Triad Today, coming to you once again from the beautiful Cena Botanical Garden in downtown Kernersville. I say special edition because over the next half hour we're going to hear from Senator Ted Budd, Congresswoman Kathy Manning with a report from Congress. We'll do that in just a moment, but first, a few words from Todd Hall, the President and CEO of Triad Federal Credit Union, who's helping to make this show possible.
In this heightened political climate, it's especially important to find resources that separate the noise from the news. A resource that focuses on what's going on in our government and how current and proposed initiatives might impact our community. That's why Triad Federal Credit Union supports Triad Today and its commitment to voter education. I'm Todd Hall, President and CEO of Triad, and we hope you enjoy this special report from Congress.
Thanks, Todd. When we come right back, a conversation with Kathy Manning.
Banking is like going for a swim. You don't need all the complicated stuff, but you don't want to feel exposed either. At Truliant, we give you just what you need, so you can manage your money on the go or stop by a branch whenever you need to. It's all about having options, while also keeping life simple with low rates, free financial advice, and friendly faces. So check out Truliant. We have just what you need.
Hi, I'm Jim Longworth, reminding you that Triad Today is now streaming on WFMY Plus, available free on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Back now on this special edition of Triad Today, our report from Congress, and where we start is with this very special guest. She's been with us before, and we're so glad she could make time for us now. The Honorable Kathy Manning, two-term Congresswoman from the 6th District. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Always glad to be with you.
Well, thanks a lot. And we have about 12 minutes to get through this. So you and I could do 3 hours on the various issues, but we'll put up your website in a minute where people can really go in depth about where you stand and some of the legislation. But let's try to get through as much as we can in the time allotted. First is, we had a couple of bank failures not too long ago, and what's on people's mind is this a portend of the future? Was it an anomaly? And put very simply, are the banks okay? Is our money safe?
Your money is safe. I think the banks are okay. The Treasury Department did the right thing. It has ensured that all depositors will get their money, and also the heads of those 2 banks that failed were fired, which I think sends the right signal.
Right. Now, let's go to inflation for a second, since we're talking about the economy. How big a problem is inflation for consumers, for the constituents you represent, and what do we do about bringing that rate down?
So we are deeply concerned about inflation. It's something we think about and work on every day in Congress. We've done a couple of things that I think are having an important impact. With the Inflation Reduction Act, we worked to bring down the cost of health care, particularly health care for seniors. We capped the cost of insulin, $35 a month. And what's been so great about it is that 2 of the major manufacturers of insulin have now announced that they are going to bring down the cost of insulin for everybody to $35, which is critical. We also capped the out-of-pocket costs for seniors for their prescription drugs to $2,000 a year, and continued the subsidies for health insurance premiums. We know health care costs are one of the big drivers, one of the things that people worry about, so that was critical. With the CHIPS and Science Act, we have huge investments in bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. Not only does that bring good-paying jobs back to the U.S., but it incentivizes the manufacturing of semiconductor chips, which are used in so many things, right back here to the U.S. that will bring down costs and also help with supply chain issues.
You mentioned folks that might be on Medicare, that type of thing. Let's go to Social Security. I'm assuming you're not for cutting Social Security.
I am not for cutting Social Security.
So what do we do then, looking at it from the opposite side of this? Okay, Congresswoman Manning, if we're not going to cut it, how do we make sure it remains solvent?
Well, first of all, I have always supported maintaining Social Security. You have paid, all of us have paid into Social Security all of our working life, and those are benefits that we've earned. I have signed on to a bill called Social Security, a Trusted Promise Act. That is a bill that addresses some things that can be done to shore up the Social Security Trust Fund. And we will continue to work on issues, things that we can do to make sure that Social Security is there now and for the future.
There have unfortunately been over 130 mass shootings this year alone. And as I'll say later in the program, just as a disclaimer, we happen to be pre-taping this program where we catch Congresswoman Manning from Easter break, so we're taping this on April the 12th. As of April 12th, over 130 mass shootings, and that includes killing, murders of children and young children. Nashville, a horrible scene. How do we fix this problem? I mean, we hear a lot of media reports and a lot of people saying, I feel sorry for these folks, but what do we do?
So Congress took a big step last term. We passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It's the first major piece of gun legislation that has been signed into law, I believe, in 30 years. That act has a wide number of things that we are doing to try to keep communities safer. I'll mention two, because we've talked about school shootings. It allows for enhanced background checks for people under the age of 21. And we know that so many of the school shootings actually happen because of shooters who are under the age of 21. This act allows us to look into juvenile and mental health records for people under 21 who are hoping to get guns.
Which we couldn't do before.
Which we couldn't do before, and I think that is a step in the right direction. It also provides funding for investment in gun violence reduction programs. There is funding in that bill for mental health treatment of children in schools and mental health training for first responders. Those are just a few of the things that it does. It incentivizes red flag laws. There are a number of other things included. I think it's a step in the right direction. It won't solve the gun violence problem, but it is moving things in the right direction.
Well, you introduced, speaking of students, you introduced some legislation recently, I think, about health and wellness and mental health. What was that all about?
Thank you so much. I introduced a bill to increase mental health wellness in schools bill. And we currently have health promotion in schools, but it mostly focuses on physical health. We want the health programs in school also to address mental health. We want young people to know that having mental health issues is perfectly normal and that they should be seeking help for their mental health issues. Also for food eating disorders. We've had a skyrocketing number of food eating disorders among school kids and mental health issues. So we want to make sure that those issues are addressed in schools, that kids understand that they can get help for those issues, and that we have mental health providers in the schools who are trained to deal with those problems.
While we're touching on health care, let's talk about Medicaid for a second. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you co-sponsored a bill that would allow cities and counties to bypass the state legislatures in order to expand Medicaid coverage.
I was looking for any way possible to increase Medicaid coverage for people in this state who are working people who make too much money to qualify for Medicaid as it currently stands in this state, but don't make enough money to afford health insurance even with the subsidies available.
Right.
So I signed on to two different approaches that I thought could help people in this community. But it does look like we are going to have Medicaid expansion in this state thanks to the persistence of Governor Cooper.
Now, you also introduced something called the Right to Contraception Act. What's that all about, and why was it needed?
So after the Dobbs opinion came out, which unfortunately did away with Roe versus Wade, Clarence Thomas, in his concurring opinion, said that he wanted to go after the Griswold versus Connecticut decision, a case decided in 1965 that first determined that women had the right to use birth control. So that was a signal from Clarence Thomas that birth control is the next thing they're going after. It is critically important that women have the right to choose when, whether, and with whom to have children. And the way to do that is to make sure that all FDA-approved birth control is available to people, and that healthcare providers have the right to prescribe the full range of FDA-approved birth control. My bill did pass the House. Unfortunately, 194 Republicans voted against a woman's right to get the full range of FDA-approved birth control, including every Republican member of the House from North Carolina. The bill did not get through the Senate last term, but we are going to reintroduce that bill this term and continue to work to make sure that women have the right to use birth control.
Medical marijuana, should the federal law change to the extent that it can be legal in all 50 states, and let's quit messing around with, well, this state's going to do this and this state's going to do that? From a federal level, should it be across the board?
Well, I think we can look and learn from the states that have approved the use of marijuana, both medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. We do see that there are some banking issues that arise because it's not federally approved. So I think the state should take a careful look at it, and I think we are going to see bills to approach it from a federal standpoint in Congress, not in this Congress, but maybe in the future.
Well, if that happens, though, should it be covered by Medicare? If I need it as an elderly person, I need that medical marijuana, it's been approved, it's legal, should it be covered by Medicare?
I always defer to the opinion of a medical provider, of a doctor, and I never want to get in between the relationship between a doctor and her patient.
Well, male legislators do that all the time.
Yes, they do, and I certainly wish they would stop doing it.
Well, I don't know why. I'm a man, and I don't know why men think they can tell women what they should do with their bodies, but I don't want to preach about that.
It's a serious issue, though, because what we're seeing today is that doctors are unable to provide the treatment that their patients need and deserve. And let's just not talk about abortion for a minute. Let's talk about women who experience miscarriages.
Right.
Some of the laws that they are putting into place, including that Texas decision that was just decided, are going to make it much more difficult for women who are already experiencing the trauma of a miscarriage. These laws are making it more difficult for those women to get the health care they need, and it's preventing doctors from providing their patients with the best possible care.
I usually don't like to get into politics too much because we don't have that much time to do these things. We want to cover the big important issues, but I will bring up the fact that when former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley announced that she was going to run for president, she stepped into a real storm of controversy by saying, hey, anybody running for a federal office should, if he's 75 years or over, should undergo a competency test. Now, a lot of people laughed at that, but then it became a serious issue. I mean, where do you stand on that?
I think that elected officials undergo competency tests every time they run for election. As a member of Congress, a member of House of Representatives, I have to demonstrate to voters every 2 years that I am competent to be a member of Congress. Presidents have to run every 4 years, senators every 6 years. So I do think we go through competency tests and we let the voters decide.
Well, the voters keep deciding that they like you. You're in second term.
Thank you very much.
For the third term, doing a lot of great work on our behalf, which I appreciate. Up on screen, I don't want to forget to mention this, manning.house.gov, because again, you can spend time on the internet, just look at this, look at all the positions, look at the policies and initiatives that are coming up. Manning.house.gov is that.
And sign up for my newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter that talks about everything I'm doing, and I think it's very informative.
Yeah, it is a good newsletter. And I appreciate all you're doing for all the folks in the 6th District and throughout the country, and I hope you'll come back soon.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure being with you.
Thanks, Kathy. We'll be right back after this.
Baby, watch me fly. Baby, watch me soar. Baby, watch me fly. I will open up the sky.
Fly local, fly easy, fly PTI.
A brighter energy future starts today, and we're ready. We're leading the clean energy transition, cutting carbon emissions even while improving reliability, adding more renewables like solar and wind. all while managing our costs to help keep energy affordable for everyone. We're Duke Energy, and we're building a smarter energy future for you.
Hi, I'm Jim Longworth, reminding you to catch my column Longworth at Large and Yes Weekly every week. It's available throughout the Triad, or you can go online, yesweekly.com. Back now on this special edition of Triad Today, our report from Congress, and now it's time to hear from the freshman United States Senator, former Congressman Ted Budd. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
We have a short time to visit. You're busy. I want to rip through as many topics as we can just to keep people informed. The first thing is, on a serious note, it hasn't been too long since we had a couple of bank failures. So I have two quick questions for you. Are the banks okay, and is our money safe?
Well, I think we did the right thing to stop the bleeding, figure out what's happening, stabilize the system. Bottom line, yes, they're safe. What we really saw was those that were in charge of regulating, those that were in charge of managing, not doing a very good job of either. So they need to step it up, do a better job at whether they're regulating or banks like Silicon Valley doing a better job of managing.
How big of a problem is inflation right now, and how do we get the rate down?
Oh, it's massive. Essentially, if you go back to what inflation really is, it's too much money chasing too few goods. So that when you pump this much money into the economy with no increased production, essentially you're going to drive inflation, and that's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing constraints around workforce, employers that are doing okay, except they can't find people to do the work. That's a constraint. You've got more money out there flowing. You've got more regulation. Energy is expensive. So we can fix this. We know what to do to fix this problem. But unfortunately, we've got so many on the left that are causing problems, either encouraging people to stay at home or discouraging energy or wanting to pump more money into the economy, and that's what's driving inflation.
The debate about Social Security rages on, what to do with it, what to do about it, how to keep it secure, how to keep it solvent. Are you for cuts, or if not, or either way, how do we keep it solvent?
You've got to protect it. You got to protect it, especially for those that are either currently in retirement or approaching retirement. Now, you also have to protect the fiscal soundness of our nation. So the way we really protect this long term is, one is you commit to protect it. The other is, and you can't allow fear mongering that people often do around Social Security and these benefits that people have worked their whole life for. But the other time you have to make sure that our nation is economically strong. That goes back to doing the things that we just talked about regarding inflation. Some people feel they're getting a cut when it comes to Social Security because the price of life is increasing.
Right, right. I mean, you start to celebrate, hey, I'm going to get an extra $300 a month. I'm 70 years old, and hey, what happened to it? Well, it just went out the window because of food
groceries,
prices.
Medical, gas, all those things which eat away at the cost of life.
Now to sort of a tragic topic of mass shootings. We've had over, by my count, and just for, again, a disclaimer, we're taping on Wednesday, April 12th. Just to this date, over 130 mass shootings in this country, and that includes school shootings, and that includes the death of small children. But traditionally, you have not been for banning assault weapons. Why not?
Ultimately, we have a people problem, and I just want to begin with all those that either have family or friends or loved ones that they've lost or know people. They're usually only 1 degree away from a horrible incident like this, particularly the one in Nashville. I know people who knew people there, and it's absolutely tragic. Ultimately, wherever people stand on the Second Amendment is we want people to come home safely each and every day. We don't want to have these incidents. Now, we go about it very differently. We want to protect the Second Amendment, but at the same time, we want to make sure we keep firearms out of the hands of dangerous individuals. Bottom line, we don't have a device problem, and it's very frustrating when people run to limit a device when ultimately we have a people problem. We've got to deal with the criminal element. We have to deal with mental illness. And so let's focus on those things which will really make a difference.
I don't see anybody on either side of the aisle rushing to say, hey, Jim, we're going to allocate however much money it takes to make sure every public school has electronically locking doors, metal detectors, extra SROs. I don't see anybody rushing to do that. And yet that would sort of prevent some of this stuff.
It sure would. And I've been in favor since 2017 when I was first in the U.S. House, the STOP Act, other things that provided more money to secure these schools. Just last year in Congress, when I was still in the House, I had a bill that encouraged veterans, enabled them to bridge more quickly into being SROs or school resource officers. So we need more school resource officers. We need to harden schools. But then it's a very different issue when you're talking about private schools, particularly the Christian school. in Nashville.
Right.
That would be up to their own budget, but certainly we want to make sure that those schools are safe too.
Let's switch a little bit and talk about medical marijuana. Increasingly, there are states going online saying, okay, we're going to go with it. Should it be a national thing? Should it be a national standard that every state that medical marijuana is legal?
Look, we want to keep this to the states as much as possible on that regard, but it's still illegal federally. What I see is medical marijuana being used as an excuse for recreational. People find ways around. They find doctors of choice to give them a prescription when they actually don't need it. If there's beneficial aspect to it medically, then that's certainly a conversation I'm willing to have. But I don't want that to be an excuse for recreational.
Well, then let's talk about the elderly, which I am one. So you take a guy at 70 years old. And
You didn't say that last year when we talked.
Yeah, well, I'm in a time warp. Well, you weren't a senator then either. So if I need medical marijuana, a doctor says it's fine. And I guess my question is, should it be covered by Medicare?
That's something that we'll have to debate and see the pros and cons of that. But again, I don't want marijuana to be used medically as an excuse for recreation.
Or abused, yeah. All right, now let's switch to foreign affairs now that you're in the U.S. Senate, focusing more on that. You've already told me off camera of having to travel overseas and do fact-finding missions. Recent AP poll, way less than half the people want us involved with Ukraine. 48% of Americans, only 48% want us to keep sending aid. Should we get out of there in the sense of, should we stop spending money and sending arms over there? I mean, when is the end?
The best thing we can do is prevention from allowing this to go further or make it worse. This is really a cleanup operation. If you go back to August of 2021, when Joe Biden had the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, the world was watching. Iran was watching. Putin, Xi in China were watching. Kim Jong-il from North Korea were watching. And now you see Iran trying to spin up their centrifuges. You see North Korea testing missiles again. You see Xi being aggressive with the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait with Taiwan. And you saw Putin invade Ukraine. All this comes from projecting American weakness rather than American strength. So what we have to get back to is being strong and not weak, which the current administration is projecting.
We talked about China before and some of the countries that we consider threats for one reason or another. Let's circle back to TikTok for a minute. People say, well, what does anybody care about TikTok? Well, I guess the question is, should it be banned to all Americans, or should it just be banned on military bases where there might be a security risk?
Look, this has been off of our government device for years. I've been warned about it since 2019. This is harmful. This is data mining and data snooping from the Chinese. They have bad designs on our youth and want more control, not less. So this is not really a debate about the First Amendment, which we revere, which we protect, which allows us to have conversations like this. So we need to be for the First Amendment, but against platforms which have bad aims and have bad purposes and by bad actors. That's what we see with TikTok. So I have a bill that's very specific to TikTok. Now there's other bills out there that I don't support regarding TikTok, but this one is very narrowly focused just on the platform.
I may be leaping too far on this, but let me just say, and not to get political about it, but President Biden at one point when he went over to Ukraine said to him, I'm going to make sure we protect your borders. There were a lot of people in Texas and some other states here that got a little miffed because they're saying to themselves, wait a minute, Mr. President, how are we going to protect our borders? What are we doing about the southern border here?
Well, that's a matter of priority, and I believe that was completely inappropriate for Joe Biden to say that when he's not doing it here in the U.S. I've been there multiple times. I've seen law enforcement that knows what to do. And it's not just drug trafficking. And by the way, the fentanyl that came across our border, it killed 105,000 U.S. citizens last year. It's tragic. In 2019, under President Trump, that number was going down for the first time in decades, the drug overdose number. And now it's gone back up. It's horrible. And a lot of that starts right there at our border. So we have to defend it. It's a 1,930-some-mile border, and we know what to do. Yes, we need a wall. Yes, we need more border enforcement. And we got to stop turning on these magnets. We got to keep Title 42 in place. There's just so many smart things we could do, which the Biden administration refuses to do.
The idea of a moratorium on immigration has been around forever. I remember in 1988, I think it was, when Patrick Buchanan was making a primary run against George Bush, saying we should have a moratorium on I'm talking about legal immigrants now, for, it's a specified number of years just to get a handle on things. Have you ever thought about that in terms of an option?
That gets floated out of frustration every several years, and I understand the frustration, but I wouldn't be for that. I am for immigration. I think whether people are Democrats or Republicans, we're actually pro-legal Americans. We want the best and the brightest to come here to make our country better. But let's differentiate between that and illegal immigration, which we all should oppose, and we should do things to actually oppose it. That includes stopping the drugs at our borders, stopping the illegal immigrants, stopping the policies that make people want to come here. In a recent trip, we actually we saw some of the roots of immigration, and we saw the policies from a Central and South American view that drive it. And so the problem starts right here. And if we fix our problems here, we can stop it at the border. We can stop the needless deaths and the human trafficking and the sex trafficking that goes along with it.
Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, when she made her announcement to run for president, said something very controversial and said, hey, any candidate for federal office who's 75 or over should undergo a competency test. Good idea, bad idea?
Yeah, I'm not really for that, because I think the people have the right idea. They can judge whether a person's competent or not. Let the people decide in this regard.
What about a constitutional amendment? I mean, there's an amendment in the Constitution that says you have to be a certain age to run for U.S. Senate, certain age. What about a maximum age?
I don't think that's look, we can certainly debate it. It's not something I would support at this time. We've got a lot of other things we need to work on in this nation. I would put that a little further down the list.
Term limits for senators and congressmen, yes or no?
Yeah, I've been very supportive of that, very consistently. And I think about 80% of the population, the voting population out there, actually supports term limits.
I won't pin you down on, how many terms, but we'll get to that. Thanks for doing this. I want to put up on screen bud.senate.gov so you can find out lots of information. I know we were going fast trying to get in as much as we could, but you can find out in-depth information about what the senator is doing and where he stands. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Jim.
We'll be right back after this.
What are you waiting for? Your future awaits at Guilford Technical Community College. Make amazing happen.
Every cookie sold in the Girl Scout Cookie Program helps girls learn lifelong lessons in people skills, decision-making, money management, goal setting, and business ethics. It's amazing how much you can learn from a cookie. The Girl Scout Cookie Program. Think outside the box.
Well, that's it for this special edition of Triad Today. I'm so glad you could be with us for our report from Congress. I want to thank, of course, Congresswoman Kathy Manning and Senator Ted Budd for their participation. We want to put up a couple quick websites if you want to visit and find out where they stand on the issues. Manning.house.gov. Please visit that. Bud.senate.gov. Also want to thank Todd Hall, Atticus Simpson, the whole team at True Line Federal Credit Union for their support. Their general website is truelinefcu.org. Check that out. And again, thanks to the good folks here at the Scenery Botanical Garden in Connersville. I'm Jim Longworth. We'll see you next week.